What's up, everyone? Tony from the Cold Case Project, back again. And today, what I want to run with you over is all content shared in these videos is readily available in any Google search. Now, with that said, I take this content, have it rewritten, and upon rewriting it, put it in these videos to spread the word on the thousands and thousands of cold cases of men and women throughout the United States that are just forgotten, and I give this platform to them so their cases and their stories can be told. Now, in addition to that, if you look down below in the description, you're going to see some brand new t-shirt and coffee cup designs I've actually gotten from a couple of my subscribers who have over the years have been giving me some awesome fan art. So with that said, I'm offering a 20% discount code down below if you check that out, and splitting proceeds with them because they are awesome. Been watching me for quite some time, and I definitely think they deserve to be rewarded for some of the work they do on top of being full-time employees also. So once again, if you have any recommendations or any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.
On August 31st, 1981, the home of 24-year-old Carolyn Sue Martin in Madison Heights, Michigan, was filled with family and friends who had gathered to help her pack. Carolyn was preparing for a fresh start, planning to leave that night with her 2-year-old son, Mark Stephen Martin, to travel south to San Antonio, Texas. Her fiancé, Hampersome Harry Carisian, had recently secured a job at an auto shop in Texas and wanted them to join him. Initially, Carolyn had intended to travel in a caravan with her twin brother, Timothy, who was heading west to Oklahoma in search of employment. However, as the day progressed, her plans shifted. That evening, Carolyn made one final stop at her mother's home in Hazel Park, Michigan, to say goodbye. While visiting, she shared unexpected news. She would no longer be traveling with Timothy and had decided to take a different route to Texas. Her family listened, unaware this would be the last time they would see Carolyn or young Mark. Days turned into weeks, then months, with no word from Carolyn or Mark. Concerns soon transformed into fear. By the following spring, her family made the painful decision to file a missing persons report. Carolyn and Mark had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions and a growing sense of dread. When questioned by authorities, Harry Carisian's account of their disappearance raised more questions than answers. He claimed that at some point during the trip, Carolyn abruptly changed her mind about moving to Texas. According to him, after they left the Detroit metro area, she asked him to pull over along I-75 near Toledo, Ohio. He stated that Carolyn wanted to end the trip, so he complied. Carisian said he let Carolyn and Mark out of his vehicle, a black 1978 or 1979 Pontiac Grand Prix, which bore a Michigan license plate number SSC 512 that expired in 1981. Reports conflict on the exact year of the car. According to him, Carolyn had only a single suitcase with her. Carisian further claimed that before parting ways, he handed Carolyn $4,000 in cash. Strangely, he also said that she instructed him to discard the rest of her belongings. After leaving Carolyn and Mark on the side of the highway, Carisian reportedly continued on his way to Texas. However, he said that after experiencing car troubles, he changed his mind and returned to Michigan. Despite these troubling statements, he maintained he had no further contact with Carolyn or Mark. Over the years, Harry Carisian's actions cast even more suspicion upon him. Following Carolyn and Mark's disappearance, he changed his name twice and is now known as Harry Carisian. Notably, Carisian refused to take a polygraph test in connection with the case. While polygraph tests are not always admissible in court and are not foolproof, his refusal only deepened the authorities' doubts about his story. Before the summer of 1981, Carisian had minimal involvement in his son's life. Carolyn had filed a paternity suit against him earlier that year, seeking financial support from Mark. In June 1981, The Macomb County Circuit Court confirmed Caresian's paternity and ordered him to pay $30 a week in child support. After this ruling, Caresian's involvement in Mark's life increased, and his relationship with Carolyn appeared to improve. Carolyn was hopeful about the future. She believed she and Caresian had reconciled and was optimistic about starting a new life together in Texas. But that future never came to pass. When Carolyn and Mark vanished, Caresian was the last person known to have seen them alive. Despite his questionable statements and refusal to cooperate further, there was no direct evidence to link him to a crime. Investigators strongly suspected foul play. Carolyn and Mark's Social Security numbers have never been used since 1981, further supporting the belief that something terrible happened to them. Despite their suspicions, law enforcement has never been able to uncover sufficient evidence to file charges against Caresian. The disappearance devastated Carolyn's twin brother, Timothy, who has spent decades searching for answers. Timothy recalled how, upon arriving at his parents' house to say goodbye, Carolyn, Mark, and Caresian had already gone. In his words, "All of a sudden my heart just fell out of my chest. Right then I knew something was wrong." That gut-wrenching instinct has never faded. In 2019, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created an age progression image of Mark Martin, depicting what he might look like at 40 years old. Upon seeing the image, Timothy was overwhelmed, stating, "It almost took me to the floor." It was a reality check, I guess, because it wasn't that 2.5-year-old sandy blonde-haired boy I was looking at. I was looking at a man. Timothy remains hopeful that Mark may still be alive, even if he is unaware of his true identity. He has a simple message for his nephew. Reach out to local law enforcement. You have a family. I'm not going to quit. There's no quitting in my DNA. I'm going to find them, and I'm going to get the answers. Despite the passage of more than 4 decades, Carolyn and Mark's family continue their relentless search for answers. Authorities are still urging anyone with information about their disappearance to come forward. Those with information are encouraged to contact the Madison Heights Police Department at 248-585-2100. At the time of her disappearance, Carolyn Sue Martin was a 24-year-old Caucasian woman of medium build, standing 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing approximately 110 pounds. She had brown shoulder-length hair and blue eyes. Her ears were pierced, and she was likely wearing a cubic zirconia engagement ring. Carolyn had a historical fracture in her arm, which could be identifiable on an X-ray. Mark Stephen Martin was just 2 years old when he disappeared. He was a Caucasian male, standing about 2 feet 7 inches tall and weighing approximately 30 pounds. He had sandy light brown hair and brown eyes. Mark may have had a lazy eye, and he was sometimes referred to by the nickname Marky. If alive today, Carolyn would be 68 years old, and Mark would be 46. For Carolyn's family, the pain of unanswered questions endures. All they seek is the truth, to know what happened to Carolyn and Mark so that they can finally find closure. After 44 years, the search for answers continues. Christa Luth was last seen on November 11th, 2008, in Lansing, Michigan. At the time, she was 34 years old and pursuing a second bachelor's degree in horticulture at Michigan State University. She had already earned a degree in botany, reflecting her passion for plants and the environment. Christa was an intelligent and driven student with aspirations to attend graduate school at Cornell University, where she hoped to further her studies in her field. Christa lived in a rented home in the 1100 block of Eureka Street in Lansing. She was sharing the space with a live-in boyfriend, but the relationship had recently ended, leaving Christa to cover the rent on her own. To help make ends meet, she sublet an apartment on the lower floor of the house to a friend. Despite the financial strain, Christa seemed determined to manage her situation, making plans to sell her truck and take on a part-time waitress job to supplement her income. On the day of her disappearance, Christa attended classes at Michigan State University. After her final class, she took the bus home and arrived in the late afternoon. Between 5:30 and 6 p.m., Christa visited her downstairs neighbor, who was also her tenant. During their conversation, Christa expressed her concerns about the financial challenges she faced following her breakup. However, despite her worries, her neighbor later recalled that she seemed generally upbeat and positive. Christa was scheduled to attend a class at a local greenhouse located just half a mile from her home. The class was set to start at 6:30 p.m., but she never arrived. Her absence raised concern, particularly because Christa was known for her reliability and dedication to her studies. When her family and friends couldn't reach her, they grew increasingly worried. Christa's family reported her missing after repeated calls to her cell phone went directly to voicemail. When authorities entered her apartment, they found troubling signs. Her cat was still inside, unattended. A pot of food was left covered on the stove, suggesting she had intended to return shortly. There were no indications that she had packed any belongings or made preparations to leave voluntarily. Her truck was also still parked outside, further undermining any theory that she had run away. Christa's loved ones described her as a responsible, caring individual who adored her family, friends, and pets. Her sudden disappearance was completely out of character. Investigators quickly suspected foul play, and the search for answers began. Authorities soon focused their attention on Christa's ex-boyfriend, Brad Cornea. He had a troubling criminal history, including convictions for rape, child abuse, and multiple violations of sex offender registry requirements. His violent past raised immediate red flags. Christa's phone records revealed that the last call she made on the night of her disappearance was to Cornea. Initially, he denied any involvement in her vanishing and provided an alibi. However, investigators found inconsistencies in his statements. Cornea's truck had broken down along U.S. 127, south of Lansing, on the night Christa went missing. Several months later, Christa's driver's license, debit card, and cell phone were discovered near the same stretch of highway, further implicating him in her disappearance. Cornea's behavior in the days following Christa's disappearance also raised suspicion. Witnesses reported that he appeared anxious and evasive. He gave conflicting stories to different people and attempted to cover up his actions. Despite the mounting evidence, without a body, investigators faced challenges in making a solid case. While the investigation into Christa's disappearance continued, Cornea's criminal activities escalated. In 2017, he was convicted of human trafficking for the commercial sexual exploitation of a minor. The severity of his crimes led to a sentence of 17 to 40 years in prison. During the trial, prosecutors described Cornea as having almost no rehabilitative potential, and the judge echoed these sentiments. In December 2020, more than a decade after Christa's disappearance, authorities charged Cornea with her murder. Despite the absence of her body, prosecutors believed the evidence against him was substantial enough to proceed. Cornea now awaits trial, maintaining his innocence. Throughout the years, Christa's family has tirelessly advocated for justice. They have participated in search efforts, held vigils, and raised awareness about her case. They remain hopeful that her body will one day be recovered, allowing them to lay her to rest. Authorities continue to urge anyone with information about Christa's whereabouts to come forward. Even the smallest detail could help provide answers and bring closure to her family. Christa Luth was a bright, compassionate woman with a deep love for the natural world. She had dreams of making a difference in the field of horticulture and was determined to contribute to environmental research. Her passion, kindness, and dedication are remembered by all who knew her. As her loved ones wait for justice, they hold onto the memories of Christa's laughter, her intelligence, and her unwavering spirit. Her story is a tragic reminder of the impact of domestic violence and the need for justice for victims who can no longer speak for themselves. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Christa Luth, please contact the Lansing Police Department or Crime Stoppers. Philip and Kathleen Breen's story began in the spring of 1988 when they married in Detroit, Michigan. Their relationship seemed idyllic at first, with Philip showering Kathleen with expensive gifts and promising her a life of luxury. He explained that his success came from shrewd stock market investments and his role as president of a well-established mortgage company in Detroit. His position allowed him to oversee substantial financial transactions, including purchasing mortgages for the firm to manage. Philip had a reputation for generosity, often lending money to friends and making sizable purchases without hesitation. One such instance was when his close friend Leonard Wolf found himself in financial distress. Philip promptly loaned him $100,000 to help him recover. His spending habits were bold, and his interests extended beyond finance. In the spring of 1989, Philip purchased the Orlando Juice baseball team for $700,000, seeing it as an exciting venture that would diversify his business portfolio. However, his enthusiasm for the team quickly became an obsession. As months passed, he invested increasingly large sums of money into the franchise, believing that his investment would eventually yield high returns. But rather than turning a profit, the financial burden of owning the team spiraled out of control. By the end of the year, he had sunk over $2 million into the team, and his drinking habits worsened as he struggled to keep up with mounting debts. During a 2-week trip to their Florida condo, Kathleen began noticing troubling changes in Philip's behavior. He seemed preoccupied, irritable, and prone to heavy drinking. The once confident and generous man she had married now appeared anxious and distracted. While Kathleen was growing concerned about her husband's deteriorating state of mind, troubling developments were unfolding in Detroit. Employees at Philip's mortgage company began uncovering serious financial irregularities. Their investigation revealed that many of the loans they had been managing were linked to non-existent companies. It became clear that Philip had been purchasing fraudulent mortgages, leading the company to suspect he had been embezzling funds. On January 5, 1990, Philip and Kathleen returned home to Detroit. That evening, he received a phone call from his company. As soon as he hung up, he retreated to another room, closing the door behind him. Kathleen, curious about his behavior, entered the room a short while later. She was shocked to find her husband in a frenzied state, surrounded by scattered papers, his face pale with anxiety. When she questioned him about what was going on, he brushed off her concerns, claiming that he had been deceived by people selling fake mortgages. The next morning, Philip reassured his employees that he would track down the individuals responsible for the fraudulent transactions and rectify the situation. At approximately 8 a.m. on January 8th, he left home, telling Kathleen he was headed to the office to address the matter. However, he never arrived. Hours passed with no sign of him, and his absence became increasingly suspicious. Eventually, Kathleen realized that he had taken some of his clothes and luggage, indicating that he might have planned his departure in advance. From that moment on, Philip Breen vanished without a trace. As the FBI launched an investigation, the full extent of Philip's crimes came to light. In less than 2 years, he had fabricated 99 fictitious loans, siphoning off over $10 million. He had used the funds to support his extravagant lifestyle, making lavish purchases, investing recklessly, and sustaining his failing baseball team. The authorities also discovered that Philip had a criminal past that had long been concealed from those around him. 12 years earlier, he had been convicted of fraud and embezzlement in Florida, information that had remained buried until his sudden disappearance. Kathleen, left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life, sought legal counsel and was advised to file for divorce. However, the legal system did not absolve her of responsibility for Philip's debts. Courts ruled that she was financially liable for the money he had stolen. In an effort to settle the outstanding debts, she was forced to liquidate nearly all of their assets. Their luxurious cars, boats, Florida condominium, and Detroit home were all sold, leaving Kathleen with little to her name. The financial ruin left her devastated, and her once comfortable life was reduced to hardship and uncertainty. Despite exhaustive efforts by law enforcement, Philip remained elusive. Over the years, there were alleged sightings of him in Florida and the Bahamas, fueling speculation that he had successfully evaded capture and was living under a new identity. However, no concrete evidence ever emerged to confirm these claims. His daughter, who had grown up under the weight of her father's notorious legacy, strongly believed that he had not survived long after disappearing. She speculated that his heavy drinking, coupled with the possibility of falling into dangerous company, had likely led to his demise. In 1997, 7 years after he vanished, Philip was officially declared legally dead. Despite the passage of time, the mystery of Philip Breen's disappearance remains unsolved. Did he flee the country and live in hiding for years? Or did his past mistakes catch up with him in a more sinister way? His case continues to intrigue those who follow financial crimes and missing persons investigations, serving as a cautionary tale of greed, deception, and the devastating impact of white-collar crime. On the afternoon of May 19, 2003, Judith Mattis was last seen driving her silver 2003 Chevrolet Impala in New Haven, Michigan. The vehicle, with its distinctive dark tinted windows and Michigan license plates, numbered 3 QW95, would later become a key piece in the investigation of her mysterious disappearance. Just days before she vanished, Judith had exhibited a notably subdued demeanor, according to her neighbor. This behavior was unusual and would later weigh heavily on the concerns of her family. When Judith's daughter reported her missing on May 21, 2003, authorities launched an investigation. At the time, Judith was living on Cynthia Street in New Haven, a place she shared with her husband of 34 years, James David Jim Mattis Sr. Although the couple had built a life together and shared both family and business responsibilities, their marriage was in turmoil. They had an adult son and daughter, owned a second home in Las Vegas, and ran an optical supply company called Unlimited Services, which employed their children. Despite these outward successes, their relationship was strained. Just 3 days after Judith's disappearance, on the morning of May 22nd, a chilling discovery was made. James was found dead in his Ford pickup truck, which was parked between 2 church vans in downtown New Haven. He had died by suicide, using a plastic zip tie to strangle himself. Next to him was a suicide note addressed to his children. The contents of the letter were deeply troubling. In it, James made statements suggesting his involvement in Judith's disappearance. He ominously hinted that she might be found in a large pile. Acting on the note's cryptic message, investigators conducted a thorough search of the local Pine Tree Acres landfill, but no evidence of Judith's remains was uncovered. While authorities initially had not suspected James in her disappearance, his death shifted the focus of the investigation. Theories of a possible murder-suicide began to emerge, and Judith's children grew convinced that their father was responsible for their mother's fate. Judith and James's marital discord was no secret. Just 2 months before her disappearance, James had filed for divorce, accusing Judith of concealing shared financial assets. Additionally, James had recently learned of a romantic relationship Judith had formed with a convicted rapist incarcerated at a nearby state prison where she volunteered. She had even used company funds to support the inmate's appeal, further straining her relationship with James. While Judith had previously weathered difficulties in her marriage, these revelations compounded the tension leading up to her disappearance. Following James's death, their son searched the trunk of the couple's second vehicle, stored at their Las Vegas residence. Inside, he found a tarp and rope, items that could be construed as tools for disposing of a body. Furthermore, on the morning after Judith vanished, the family business's dumpster emitted a strong chemical odor, described by the eldest son as that of cleaning products. When the company's trash was eventually collected and discarded, it left a lingering suspicion that crucial evidence may have been permanently lost. Months later, a significant break in the case occurred when Judith's Impala was located abandoned on Adelaide Street, near Comerica Park in Detroit. The car, which had been ticketed on July 3rd and left untouched for weeks, was infested with bees and clearly neglected. Upon searching the vehicle, investigators found Judith's purse, containing her personal belongings and cash. Yet, there were no further signs of Judith herself. The unsettling discovery of the car did little to shed light on her fate. Compounding the family's agony, in March 2004, The body of an unidentified woman washed ashore at Pigeon Lake in Port Sheldon Township, Michigan. Although initial speculation suggested it could be Judith, forensic testing eventually ruled out that possibility, leaving her family without closure once more. In August 2004, after a lengthy investigation, authorities petitioned for Judith to be declared legally deceased. They successfully argued in court that James had murdered her before ending his own life. Investigators asserted that, had James survived, they would have pursued criminal charges against him for Judith's murder, even without the recovery of her remains. Judith's children, still grappling with the loss of both parents, continued to operate unlimited services. Their grief was compounded by the belief that justice was never truly served. They expressed frustration with law enforcement, feeling that the search efforts had been insufficient and that investigators had failed to follow promising leads. To this day, the circumstances surrounding Judith Mattis' disappearance remain unresolved. Her body has never been found, and her children continue to seek answers. While authorities are confident that James was responsible, the absence of definitive evidence leaves lingering doubts and unanswered questions. For those who knew and loved Judith, the painful mystery endures, as they hold onto the hope that one day the truth will be fully uncovered. Anyone with information regarding Judith Mattis' disappearance is urged to contact the Macomb County Sheriff's Office. The morning air hung thick with summer humidity as Donnie Ray Martin III pulled on his work boots. August 3rd, 2017 promised to be another scorcher in Madison Heights, Michigan, but the 31-year-old tree trimmer didn't mind. Work was his anchor, the one constant in his years-long battle against addiction. As he climbed into his brother-in-law's truck, he could never have imagined this would be the last ordinary morning of his life. The crew was dismissed early that day. Around 11 a.m., Donnie's brother-in-law offered him a ride home, just like always. But this time was different. "Nah, I'm good," Donnie said, squinting against the midday sun. "Gonna walk. Might stop for a haircut." He stuffed his hands in his pockets and started down the street, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow on the pavement. 20 minutes later, his girlfriend Mackenzie received a routine text, the last digital breadcrumb before silence swallowed him whole. For Leslie Martin, Donnie's stepmother, the panic set in slowly. At first, it was just a nagging worry when Donnie didn't show up for dinner. By midnight, it had curdled into full-blown terror. This wasn't like him. Not the Donnie who doted on his mother, who never missed a day of work, who despite his struggles with heroin, maintained an almost childlike sweetness. She'd seen that sweetness firsthand when they bonded over their shared love of dogs, exchanging photos of rescue pups and swapping stories about the black bears that sometimes wandered near her Florida home. As the search began, the family encountered a wall of silence more impenetrable than the dense Michigan woods. Flyers they posted around Detroit's roughest neighborhoods, the kind of places Donnie sometimes frequented score drugs, were torn down almost as fast as they went up. During one organized search, shadowy figures emerged from boarded-up houses to warn them away with silent stares and the occasional shouted threat. The message was clear. Some secrets weren't meant to be uncovered. The police investigation moved with frustrating sluggishness. Donnie's last cell phone ping placed him near John R. Street and State Fair Avenue, a notorious crossroads in Detroit's underworld. But jurisdictional squabbles between Madison Heights and Detroit police left gaping holes in the search. Detectives seemed quick to write it off as just another addict who'd either overdosed or skipped town, until they met Donnie's family and realized this was someone who was deeply loved, someone whose absence left a crater in multiple lives. For Leslie, the nightmare carried a cruel familiarity. Nearly 3 decades earlier, her sister-in-law, Julie Lindsay, had vanished from Daytona Beach under eerily similar circumstances, another vibrant life reduced to a cold case file. Now history was repeating itself with agonizing precision. The parallels kept her up at night. The unanswered questions, the whispers in dark corners, the way both cases seemed to attract ominous rumors like moths to flame. Some claim Donnie had been given a hot shot, a lethal dose of fentanyl-laced heroin meant to punish or silence him. Others suggested he'd witnessed something he shouldn't have in Detroit's drug underworld. The most chilling theory came from a recovered addict who told police, under condition of anonymity, that bodies sometimes disappeared into the city's vast network of abandoned buildings, places where not even urban explorers dare to tread. 5 years have passed. The trail has grown colder than a Michigan winter. Donnie's mother still keeps his room exactly as he left it, unable to relinquish the hope that her son might one day walk through the door. His father spends sleepless nights scouring online forums for any scrap of new information. And Leslie? She's become an unwilling expert on missing persons cases, her heart breaking anew with each fresh disappearance she reads about. The woods where Donnie once worked as a tree trimmer have grown thicker, the underbrush swallowing old paths. But his family's determination remains unshaken. They know the truth is out there, buried perhaps in the memory of someone too afraid to come forward or hidden in some overlooked police report. Until it surfaces, they'll keep searching, keep asking, keep refusing to let Donnie become just another statistic in Detroit's long history of unsolved mysteries. Because Donnie Ray Martin III wasn't just a missing person. He was a son, a brother, a man who loved animals and made people laugh and fought every single day to be better than his demons. And no matter how many years pass, his family won't rest until they bring him home. If you have any information about Donnie's disappearance, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please contact the Madison Heights Police Department at 248-585-2100. That your tip could be the one that finally solves this heartbreaking mystery.